Hey there everybody, how's it going? My name is Thamriel. Welcome everybody to Final Fantasy XIV. In today's video, we're going to be talking about whether Final Fantasy XIV is worth getting into in the start of 2018. 2018 is finally upon us, and this is a video to sort of report on the state of the game entering into 2018. Now, clearly all games are worth trying out for yourself, and everybody's going to have different taste in games, but I'm going to go ahead and do a quick report on what currently Final Fantasy XIV got going on for itself in 2018, and the current state of every part of Final Fantasy XIV right now as of this moment. Obviously, this is something for you to decide on your own as well afterwards. This is just my way of saying, hey, look at this game and see what's going on there. There is no clear yes or no answer for this particular thing, but this will hopefully help me give you this answer or help influence this answer for you. I originally got into Final Fantasy XIV because I was looking for another MMO to play because I was getting bored of World of Warcraft's Warlords Redrainer expansion. Sitting around in a garrison was not something that I found extremely interesting, and at a certain point I just got fed up and started exploring new grounds. I was playing at that point also Guild Wars 2 and Elder Scrolls Online, and while those games were also pretty entertaining, I found Final Fantasy XIV to capture my attention the most, and I've been playing it ever since. I got up to level 35, and by that time I also knew that I really loved what Final Fantasy XIV had going for it back before even the first expansion Heavensward was out. I've been playing this game for about 2 years now, and I cannot appreciate enough the fact that I left World of Warcraft to find new pastures, because Eorzea, the land in Final Fantasy XIV, has captured me, has enamored me. I am now a proud member of Eorzea. Nevertheless, let's go ahead and get into some of the parts of the game that we can talk about. I'm gonna try to keep it as relative as possible to the ESO video with similar type of categories. Let's start with talking about what is Final Fantasy XIV. If you ever heard of Final Fantasy XIV back in 2010, you probably known of it as a failure of a game. The patch 1.0 for Final Fantasy XIV was the worst possible release that the game could have been in, and unfortunately, because of bad design choices and not enough of supervision and detailed attention from Square Enix, the development of the game went on as incoherent as possible and turned out to be what we received in as patch 1.0. I've unfortunately never played patch 1.0, otherwise I'll be able to exactly retell you what I've personally experienced. I cannot, however, since I never experienced it, but there are many players that have experienced it and have told me some horror stories about it. In fact, there is a documentary that you can watch by Noclip. Noclip was able to interview Naoki Yoshida, the lead developer for Final Fantasy XIV Reborn, as well as a CEO of Square Enix and also other members of the development team that were part of either the 1.0 era or a Reborn era, or were part of the staff that helped rebirth the Final Fantasy XIV as a brand new game. It's a literal incarnation of Phoenix coming from its ashes, and it's actually a really interesting and epic story of how the game came around to be rebirthed all over again. It is actually really inspiring to see how much work it took in order to rebirth the world, and how Square Enix, instead of just scrapping the entire game and shutting down directly, went ahead and tried to remake the world and deliver the product that is worthy for their customers. In fact, this particular project almost bankrupted Square Enix entirely and ruined the Final Fantasy XIV franchise overall, which is extremely incredible to think about, that this project was able to survive for this long and is able to give us the game that we have right now, and even have 2 expansions for the game. Also, for any newcomers, if you never played a Final Fantasy game before this one, don't worry. You don't have to play Final Fantasy 13, 12, 11, 10, or any of them in order to be able to experience this one. Each Final Fantasy game is treated as a separate unless it's a direct sequel, like 10 to 10-2, or Final Fantasy 13, 13-2, or 13 Lightning Return. If it's not a direct sequel or direct iteration, then it can be treated as a separate game overall, so don't worry. If you never played any, you're good to go. Let's go ahead and start off with talking about the graphics and the sound and the audio behind this game. What you listen to right now, what you're going to be listening to the entire way throughout this video, is the audio directly from the game. I actually started using a little bit more of a recent tracks, but I'm gonna try to mix in some of the older tracks as well. I'll keep a list of them, keep a tally of them. If you want to check out any of the tracks at all, I make sure to at least put it somewhere within the video, the actual title of the song, if you want to look it up on YouTube later. It has one of the most beautiful soundtracks, one of the most varied soundtracks, going from some of the most epic, dark, symphonic tunes to the most relaxing piano pieces, one of the most beautiful pieces I've ever seen in the entire game, to even something as electro rock in the Alexander Raids. If you ever heard the Brute Justice theme, hopefully I'll be playing it right now in this part of the video. It is one of the most interesting tracks and soundtracks ever to hear in a video game. Final Fantasy XIV covers from all types of genres of music possible and tries to incorporate it to make sure that it meets the theme or the boss battle or the particular zone or area. If it doesn't meet it, then, you know, it's something wrong. Music in Final Fantasy XIV is incredible. Has a lot of fanfare regarding music, especially the Chocobo theme and the Chocobo Racing theme, if you ever heard those before. It pays just overall a lot of homages to previous Final Fantasy games throughout this entire soundtrack, which I think is really cool. The fact that they're able to, I guess, remix some of the older tracks to sound, I guess, more new while keeping the same theme to them. It's really nice of them to do so. Final Fantasy XIV's graphics are pretty nice, the environments look really pretty, the particle effects when you do attacks are really flashy, and I personally really like them, but if you don't like them, you can always turn them off in case they get a little too hectic. There is an option over in the character menu which you can turn them down, and hopefully this portion of the video I'll be able to showcase me turning down the effects to show what it would be like in a raid. Personally, I like the flashy effects, I'm already used to them, and I'm able to orientate around them in a raid no problem, but overall the effects are nice and flashy and bright. Some people might be a little bit too much, but you can turn it down if necessary. The game plays as a tap targeting MMO. If you ever played games like Rift or World of Warcraft, then it's gonna be easy for you to get into Final Fantasy XIV. Regarding your character in Final Fantasy XIV, there are many aspects about your character that I really like in Final Fantasy XIV. The way that the game sees your character. Your character is able to have multiple jobs, classes, and professions all at once on one singular character without you needing to create alts. You can, however, create alts if you want to, but if you want to keep with progressing your character as the character without needing to re-unlock certain dungeons, re-unlock raids, reattune to certain things, you can always stick to just one singular character for everything. And that's the best part about Final Fantasy XIV. This is one thing that people usually refer to whenever they talk about Final Fantasy XIV, is that you can be every single job in the game. Now, to explain a little bit about the jobs and classes, classes is something that the jobs first start at, or your character first starts at. For example, I play usually as a bard, as my job, my primary job, but I started originally as an archer. Eventually at level 30, Archer gets a quest from their class trainer, or the class guild leader. And yes, you actually do have class quests, which is actually another great thing about Final Fantasy XIV, in order to unlock the bard abilities and become a bard. You eventually get a soul stone, lets you utilize bard abilities and learn bard abilities in the future as you level up. But if, let's say, for example, I didn't want to play bard as much and I wanted to learn how to tank or how to heal, instead of creating an alt and beginning from the very beginning with re-unlocking every dungeon, re-unlocking every raid and so forth and so on, and re-unlocking every other piece of content that already unlocked in my main character, I could always go and take my main character that I have right now as a bard, head over to the guild trainer or the class trainer, unlock the class, get it to level 30, unlock the job for it, and play as a tank or play as a healer. Your character is not locked to a particular class like it would be in World of Warcraft or Guild Wars 2 or Elder Scrolls Online, where you have to pick a class and begin with that character. You can swap jobs and classes on your own in the future as you unlock them in the future, or unlock new areas where you can unlock new classes and or jobs. However, you do gotta keep in mind that you do have to re-level those new classes and jobs that you unlock. Let's say, for example, I never played a paladin and I need to unlock gladiator. I have to level gladiator from level 1 to level 30 to unlock the job paladin, and from then on take the paladin from level 30 to level 70 in order to reach max level and be able to do endgame as paladin. It will take some time, it will take a lot of experience, it may take some grinding, but there are systems and instances in the game that you can run right now, such as dungeons, roulettes, guild hests, hunting logs, fates. There's more than one way to skin a cat, and likewise applies over in Final Fantasy XIV. There's more than one way to get to max level as a brand new class. It will take some time. It's not going to be an instant process unless you want to get like a job boost portion, and even then you don't exactly need that. As I'm making this video, I currently have right now 11 jobs sitting at level 70 at max level. I just gotta get the other ones leveled up there, but it really doesn't take that long to get all the other jobs at max level. And even then, even if there is a lull in a content with nothing as much as going on, you can always work on leveling those particular jobs, either through roulettes, dungeons, leaf quests, hunting logs, you name it. Like I I said, there's more than one way to skin a cat. And when I say don't skin a cat, I mean it in a figurative speech. Don't literally go skinny cats, please. Don't harm animals, please, I beg of you. Regarding banking and market board or auction house, Final Fantasy XIV has retainers, which are your personal assistants that have more than one functionality. They can store your items and they have a full inventory slots available for you, which actually opens up with a lot of space for you to store things in. In other MMOs that I played before in the past, like Elder Scrolls Online, Guild Wars 2, or World of Warcraft, you have to upgrade those inventory slots, while retainers start off with a really hefty amount of open space for you to store items in or store stackable items into. In fact, you yourself have a lot of inventory space from the very start. You don't have to upgrade your bags or get bag expansion or inventory expansion, which is another amazing thing I love about Final Fantasy XIV. Hoarders, welcome to the best inventory management system overall, although that still doesn't stop people from hoarding like insane. Also, the retainers have the ability to sell you things over on the market board, which is the auction house for Final Fantasy XIV. And right at the vendor, when you put up something to sell for your retainer, they will go and put up for market for you to be sold, and will keep the gold until you go pick it up if something does sell. You'll be notified in the game if something does sell, however, so do not worry one bit. Retainers can be summoned through the summoning bells that are layered all over Eorzea. Typically, they're layered over in residential districts and capital cities and the market area for each capital city, or they can be also put up at your free company home if you can put up one with your free company to have an easier and more convenient way of summoning a retainer. When you put up the item to be sold on market board, you can also compare the prices that other players have put up their items for and try not to undercut other players as you try to, keep the economy nice and stable so that people don't have to be losing out. Seriously, don't undercut. That's kind of a messed up thing to do. Also, your retainers can be given classes and eventually be geared up and can be leveled up and be sent onto ventures to gain you resources and rewards that you can either use for crafting yourself or to sell back on the market board to other crafters. Crafting is a huge business in Final Fantasy XIV and people take it very seriously, so any materials they can get for a good price is usually something they want to go for. Sending your retainers to ventures is pretty important, and as you send them on more difficult ventures and more complex ventures, they'll be able to yield better rewards for you. Aside from micromanaging your retainers, you also have the option to micromanage your Chocobo. Actually, one of the first big Grand Company quests that you get when you join a Grand Company, almost like a pseudo-faction of Final Fantasy XIV. Pseudo-faction, that'll be explained a little bit later in PvP, however. Don't worry about that, we'll get to it. Your first task is to get a Chocobo. Your very own Chocobo. You get to name it, and you get to put a barding on it, put like a little saddle on it, and then eventually throughout the game as you level up forward, you will learn the ability to summon your Chocobo using something called Gisso Greens, cabbages. Chocobos absolutely love Gisso Greens, so using a Gisso Green will summon your Chocobo for about 30 minutes to fight alongside you. The Chocobo can also be leveled up as they fight alongside you, and as they level up, they will be able to get skill points. You can use those skill points to make the Chocobo feel more attuned towards a tanking, healing, or DPS profession. That means the more points you put into the healing profession of Chocobo, the better healer they're going to be. The more you put into the tanking one, the more of a tank they're going to be, and same thing happens for when you put all the points into DPS. However, if you want to keep your Chocobo balanced, to have a good balance between healing, tanking, and DPSing, you can do so. However, that is currently how I'm running right now my Chocobo. And the armor that you saw my Chocobo wearing can be acquired through 4 different ways. The armor, by the way, is called a barding. There's 4 particular ways to acquire it. 1, to craft it using materials gathered from primals, from bosses. 2, to be able to earn it through ranks in your Grand Company. 3, to get it through seasonal events. Or 4, to be able to get it through the Gold Saucer. Particular to barding can be acquired through Gold Saucer. There is another method of just purchasing it through the cash store, but that is still pretty limited. It does look really cool. A lot of the cash store barding does look kind of cool, but a lot of it can be acquired through a game without any purchases with real money. Aside from that, your Chocobo will be the best leveling companion you'll ever have throughout your adventures in Eorzea. I have no idea how many times I've used my Chocobo all the time to grind through mobs and make it easier for me to hunt down certain mobs and monsters. It just makes it a lot easier when you're leveling secondary classes and jobs, especially when you're leveling secondary classes and jobs. Regarding endgame content in Final Fantasy XIV, let's start off with talking about the PvE content. As you're going to be leveling throughout Final Fantasy XIV, you'll unlock things like dungeons, guild hests, leaf quests, trials, raids, and roulettes. Towards the endgame, you'll be doing endgame dungeons, savage raids or basic raids, alliance raids, and expert trials, which is a harder version of trials, as well as roulettes. When you're leveling, dungeons will be unlocked throughout the story, and you'll be able to unlock other side dungeons throughout just talking to NPCs around the world, around the area, and around capital cities, especially around capital cities. A lot of bonus dungeons will be unlocked on the side for you to do in order to vary up your content a little bit more and to break up leveling a little bit more if you want to do some dungeons instead of doing some questing for a little bit. The story is pretty important. There is a major narrative in Final Fantasy XIV that you have to follow through in order to unlock the story and in order to progress your progression to max level. Story is going to be very important, but you can also do some things to break up this story grind if you really need to. Guild Hest is like a mini version of a dungeon. It teaches you the basic mechanics as well as gives you free, easy experience for first time completion of the Guild Hest. It tries to teach you things like kiting the boss around, avoiding AoE markers, killing ads on time, or just in general learning about some of the dungeon mechanics you will see in dungeons. Leaf quests are repeatable quests that can be completed by either battle professions, crafting professions, and gathering professions. They are repeatable, but you do have an allowance per leaf quest, so you can't just spam them the whole day. You will run out of the allowance for leaf quests at a certain point. It is best to leave those for crafting and gathering or for your side classes to level the side classes and side jobs for the future. You'll also get something called trials, which is typically an 8-player encounter with a singular boss. Typically you'll be fighting against a primal, things like Ifrit, Garuda, Titan. If you ever heard of these primals before, then you should have no problem understanding what they're going to be like and what kind of elements you're going to have to work with. Typically those things are for 8 players, but at first the first 4 trials you will encounter will be for only 4 players because it's going to be the first introductory trials necessary for the storyline. Everything will be explained story-wise why you're doing those primals and why you're taking them on. Overall the mechanics are pretty simple, but as you progress throughout the game you'll be fighting commonly all the primals with an 8-player party of 2 tanks, 2 healers, and 4 DPS. Raids also include the party of 2 tanks, 2 healers, and 4 DPS, and raids include a sequence of bosses, unlike World of Warcraft where you have a singular raid that you enter with your party of maybe 10 or 25 players or whatever, depends on which content you're running or which difficulty you're running, and you have to slog through a lot of ads. Raids get to the point of just getting you to the boss. You're not going to be doing a lot of ad clearing in basic raids in Final Fantasy XIV. Alliance raids are similar to LFR in World of Warcraft, where you'll be taking on large-scale content, large-scale raids with 23 other players, overall making up a group of 24. 3 tanks, 6 healers, and the rest are DPS. They're going to be split up into 3 parties of 8 called alliances. So you will have Alliance A, B, and C. You will have to deal with ads in that particular situation, but not as much as you would have to deal in a basic raid in World of Warcraft, for example. Expert trials are just a harder version of trials that yield better rewards and can possibly yield a mount depending on which primal you're fighting. Around Reborn primals give you ponies, Hemsworth primals give you birds, and Stormblood primals give you dogs to ride. Roulettes encompass everything of PvE content, from dungeons to guild hests to raids to trials to alliance raids to even a PvP match. These roulettes can be run daily if you want to and can give you a 1-day reward for running them. Running a leveling roulette as a max level will also yield you the rewards necessary for your current level. So let's say for example you're running a leveling roulette or a level 50 to 60 dungeon or a trial roulette as a max level character, you will get the rewards that are going to be beneficial for you at max level, which is usually some gil and endgame currency in order to help you buy endgame gear for raiding. If you're doing a leveling roulette or a trial roulette as a leveling character around maybe like, I don't know, level 30, 40, or 50 or something, you'll get a lot of experience appropriate to your level as well as the necessary gil appropriate to your level. This encourages both veterans and new players to play together, and I think it's a really intelligent system in Final Fantasy XIV. Now moving on to PvP, which is something that Stormblood, especially patch 4.0 for Final Fantasy XIV, brought huge changes to revitalize PvP all over again. Before, PvP in Final Fantasy XIV was kind of like a lame duck. It wasn't exactly a well-formulated, well-constructed game mode in Final Fantasy XIV, and Final Fantasy XIV was never regarded as an MMO for PvP. Now with the changes to 4.0 in Final Fantasy XIV's PvP mechanics and combat and abilities, it re-evaluated and redesigned everything PvP related. You get brand new abilities that are only PvP related, you got brand new hotbar that is only available for PvP instances or when you enter Wolf's Den to duel or whatever. You have dueling in Wolf's Den, 8 vs 8 and 4 vs 4 game modes in the Feast. You have the front lines of 24 versus 24 versus 24 of pinning players against each other depending on the Grand Company that you join, which is why Grand Companies were kind of a pseudo faction. You can't queue in as a freelancer, which puts you in a random Grand Company, so Grand Companies don't really have a purpose anymore, technically, kind of. And Rival Wings were added, which is a MOBA-like game mode, which I covered in a previous video, link to that below. Nevertheless, PvP in Final Fantasy XIV is nice and new and definitely is worth to try out. The resource management for mana and TP, the tactical points, is a little bit different, so that is something to get used to for sure, but overall the PvP has been simplified and made a lot easier. In order to get into PvP, all you have to do is be level 30 in Final Fantasy XIV, unlock the content from your Grand Company, and fully unlock the content from the Wolf's Den pier. PvP gear in Final Fantasy XIV at the moment serves nothing but the cosmetic value at level 70, so if you want to look really cool in PvP, you can. Entering into PvP does not require to have any particular type of gear, it just scales you up to max level even at level 30, and your skill is the only thing that will keep you afloat in Final Fantasy XIV PvP. And let me iterate one point, when I say PvP in Final Fantasy XIV is easier to understand, but you do need skill in order to know what the hell you're doing in order to play well. If you don't know what you're doing whatsoever in PvP, then you're gonna have a really hard time doing any PvP against any other players, and you will have a hard time going up against the opposing faction. Understanding what your job does in PvP, what your strengths and weaknesses are, what kind of crowd control abilities you have on you, and what your role is in PvP is really important. Just like in PvE, PvP is really easy to understand but hard to master, so better get PvPing. Oh, okay, now I'm gonna dial it down a little bit with some more relaxing music as I cover the last little tidbits of Final Fantasy XIV that I think are pretty important to just at least mention, if not have a full discussion about. There we go, this feels a lot more relaxing. Isn't this music nice? This music is so nice. Final Fantasy XIV's music covers from anything intense or really epic to nice and relaxing and somber, and that's what I love about it. By the way, some of these themes are night themes, so day themes and night themes do matter in Final Fantasy XIV. Nevertheless, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about crafting and gathering. If you ever heard anything about crafting and gathering or watched guides on crafting and gathering in Final Fantasy XIV, which I'll leave links to those in the beginning in the description below for beginner guides and everything, you have your own rotations and your own methods of acquiring certain things as a gatherer and crafting things as a crafter. Depending on the type of quality that you have input in your crafting, you can make some really good gear. For example, making an iron sword and a high quality iron sword, the difference between the two is the amount of damage they will do, or the amount of materia that you can put into the weapon. Materia are like gems in World of Warcraft, where you can slot gems into a particular socket. And in making high quality items is usually really important, and using high quality gathering items as well is going to be really important for you because it will let you make high quality items a lot easier, a lot better, a lot faster. Gathering in its own is its own art because you actually choose what you want to gather from particular ore, from particular tree or whatever. And even when fishing, you choose what kind of fish you want to try to fish for. This ability and this freedom to choose what you want to gather and have your own rotation and complexity and depth to crafting and gathering is really nice, and I love the fact that Final Fantasy XIV has something like that going for it. I don't have any particular footage that I was able to record. I actually don't have any of crafters and gatherers ready to be shown off whatsoever, unfortunately, but I will make sure to leave videos to beginner guides to those in the description below. Housing is also another really cool thing, and aside from having your own personal house or your free company house to customize and shape around however you want to, FC housing and personal housing offers utilities like horticulture, ability to train your Chocobo, and the ability to use the crafting foundry in the basement of your free company home that lets you build together airships and send airships for their own ventures, kind of like the retainers, to then yield some sort of materials back to you. It is very important to have a free company home, and before I talk about anything else, I do want to address that there is currently a housing market crash issue with Final Fantasy XIV. At the moment, on really popular servers, there are not enough houses to accommodate all the players and even free company members if they want to gather their own house. In fact, we had our own dilemma before, and I want to once again also reiterate and thank Ree, a good friend of mine that traded her medium house in a goblet for a small house that I was able to acquire in Shirogane on the day of the beginning of the Shirogane housing, the new neighborhood housing over in the Eastern Islands. Everybody in Eorzea wants to get a little piece of the East for themselves and claim it for their own or for the free company, and with patch 4.1, I think 0.15 maybe, the houses that were introduced were just not enough for the large growing player base in Final Fantasy XIV. Square Enix said they're going to be addressing this issue in patch 4.2, so we'll see what happens, but nevertheless, housing is a pretty nice thing to have and a pretty utilitarian thing to have right now in Final Fantasy XIV. You can get, if you can get your hands on it. If you play on not as busy servers, you might be able to get a house for yourselves, no problem. Another minor thing that we can cover is Final Fantasy XIV at the current moment has now swimming, where you can swim underwater and swim on top and be able to float on top of the water. And gatherers can actually swim underwater over in the Ruby Sea and acquire materials underwater, which is kind of cool. You have a screenshot tool for group pose that allows you to take better screenshots without photoshopping them on your own, while applying filters and effects that are built into the game. You have the ability for bards to play music, which they'll get their own little utility UI set up for themselves in patch 4.2 apparently. Mounts, a variety of mounts for the entire game, more mounts that you can count. An easy way to acquire them is either through beast tribes, getting along and getting better with particular beast tribes and beast factions of Final Fantasy XIV, or to be able to acquire them from going up against and taking on the extreme primals over on Final Fantasy XIV and seeing if you can get a pony, a bird, or a dog from completing the primals on extreme mode. Some of the mounts can also be gathered from raids on savage mode if you want to grind those, if you really want to. There is no guaranteed chance with some of them, but you can however get them if you try really hard and work really hard towards endgame. PvP mounts are also available right now with the Garu event if you ever want to get into those are also available, and tanks get their own mounts if you complete a certain amount of instances as well. There's pages upon pages of emotes that can be already started off for you in the beginning, and you can unlock a lot more emotes and dances as well throughout playing the game. A lot of the events and emotes can be unlocked through seasonal events, which is why it's really important to keep up with seasonal events if you really want to. If you have however missed out on seasonal events, that can be acquired from the in-game store if you really want to acquire them. Things like the posing rangers is one of my favorite ones, where you could like strike a pose and hold a pose, one of my favorite ones ever. Also, as I mentioned, seasonal events is another great thing in Final Fantasy XIV, as it adds new things for you to look forward to with new rewards year to year. While some of the seasonal events may not be as more extravagant as they were a year before that, or the year before that even, they always try to give you something different to look forward to and something different of a reward to give you that you never had the previous year. This year for the Christmas event we had the bear mount, and for the New Year's event we have the little dog hats and helmets that you can acquire. I actually just recently completed it today and it was actually pretty adorable. And at the end, last but not least, you have veteran rewards, which get rewarded for the amount of months that you subscribe to the game. As the very first month that you subscribe to the game, actually, you get a reward of a free Fantasia potion. Fantasia potion allows you to change your character's race and gender and any of the appearances, pretty much redo the character creation process for your character if you're not happy with your original character. I saved mine up ever since I got it long time ago when I made my first Makoti female character, and just recently I used it to make it into Makoti male. I may go back in the future, but I don't know, just something spontaneous I went with. But it's kind of cool that Final Fantasy XIV team thanks you in such a manner to, you know, for playing the game for so long. Nevertheless, this was a little bit long-winded. I apologize about it. There's just so much to cover regarding Final Fantasy XIV, and I feel like I really want to make sure that I talk about the big things and the little things as much as I can. Nevertheless, I'll try to make this a lot shorter next time around for games. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. My name is Samuel. Like, subscribe, and as always every day. Let me know if I missed anything out regarding Final Fantasy XIV in the comments below. And if you have any questions at all whatsoever, feel free to ask in the comments below. And I'm pretty sure me or other Final Fantasy XIV community members will answer about Final Fantasy XIV. Nevertheless, I hope you enjoyed. My name is Samuel. Like, subscribe, and as always every day. And I'll see you all over in Eorzea if you try the game out. By the way, the game does have a free trial, so I highly recommend downloading it and playing it for yourself. Lets you go up to level 35 for every single job and class that you and profession that you unlock in Final Fantasy XIV, and you get to level up to level 35. Try it out. If you like it, then keep playing it. If you don't like it, well, you tried the game out. Nevertheless, hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you later, y'all. Bye.